What's going on, everybody? We are back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is Friday, September 8th, a tough day for me personally. We're putting my 15-year-old dog down. But I like to say that's what you sign up for. You get 15 years of happiness and love and then one really horrible day. And it was an awesome life for Bella. Shout out Bella to all my friends that helped watch her over the years. You guys are the best. But more importantly, well, equally as important, we've got a big show today planned. We're going to be talking AEW. We're going to be talking WWE SmackDown preview. And I've got quite the esteemed panel with me today. First and foremost, I've got my co-host over on Wrestling Off the Air. I've got the guy that has rode with me for, 3 shows this week? We got from the DMV, Shad.
What's good, man? I told you off the air. I need that I'm a Clark Taylor guy t-shirt, man. Hey. Yeah, man. Second day in a row. I'm working out here, man. Friday. We ready to talk some wrestling. First and foremost to you, man. Much love to you, bro. Much love to your dog, Bella. I never met Bella, but rest in peace, baby girl. You lived a great life, and my thoughts and prayers go to you, dog.
Appreciate that, Shad, man. Thank you so much. And then absolutely, we've got up next our head of reviewing, co-host of the Republic Ramble, Coby G, Regina, Canada. Coby Galenzoski, how are you today, my friend?
Over there, bringing back something that hasn't aired in a long time.
Hey, I'm on the game today.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the Republic Ramble will come back when it is deemed necessary. But at the end of the day, we got a weekend of wrestling. We got stuff to talk about regarding both SmackDown and Collision, and I'm ready. I'm glad to be back on a show with Clark. It's been a long time. It's been at least a week, I think. But
it's been far too long.
I'm here to talk.
Absolutely. I'm stoked about it too. Let's get right into it. But before we do, let's show some comments here. We got Bobby Petito. Hello, guys. What's going on?
Bobby Petito.
And then Bobby with another comment. Charlie Dempsey is wrestling against Axiom on Reality of Wrestling on September 23rd. That's actually very fascinating.
Wow, I didn't know that. That
is an interesting,
really cool.
Yeah, Bobby, thank you for that. That's fascinating and big to see. Two NXT guys on a non-NXT show. That'll be something we, for off the air especially, have to check out. But
but Booker T's been getting a number of NXT talent.
That's right
on the show. Like I think he had Ivy Nile earlier this year, Trick Williams a month and a half ago, something like that. But it's great stuff seeing them trust at least Booker T to treat their talent well.
It is definitely, that's a great point. I think it's a testament to Booker T and the trust they have in him and his ability to both be coach and commentator and run a show, right? And do right by the NXT superstars at the end of the day. But let's get into our first topic of the day, which is, which star is it from Raw that's headed to SmackDown? I'm going to start with you, Coby. Who is it and why?
I think that's the biggest thing is that I don't want to be spoon-fed, telegraphed situations like it be just being Cody Rhodes. I can see why it would be Cody Rhodes, but I don't want it to be Cody Rhodes because that's spoon-feeding us the WrestleMania main event, and that is making it the most telegraphed main event in all of history, next to The Rock and Cena, which they gave us a year of build. At the end of the day, I want to look at what was said among Adam Pearce when he was talking to Jey Uso about this trade. Because he ensued and basically hinted at the fact that this move is going to tick a lot of people off. And I don't want not rub people the wrong way, but it's going to make people mad. The only trade that makes the most sense with that description is how it affects the Judgment Day if Dominic Mysterio goes to SmackDown. If Dominic Mysterio is split from the roster, or not the roster, but the family, we have not only a different dynamic that the Judgment Day can tell the story through, because, like I said, they've had the up and down since before winning the tag titles. Now we're looking at a scenario where, okay, this changes the game, this changes the story, and they can tell it well. They can tell us a story that isn't necessarily telegraphed, like Cody going to SmackDown so he can feud with Roman in 6 months. At the end of the day, I think that's good because you also have a dynamic with Rey Mysterio. They're both champions. I don't know if this is how you get a title for title scenario between Rey and Dom. Obviously, that might be a little telegraphed because you're not going to put 2 titles on Rey, let alone 1 in the year 2023. It's fun to see him as a champion, but I don't know if that's the move you go. But you have the Judgment Day getting mad, and you have Rey Mysterio being on the same brand as Dominic. I think that's the move you go if you want to best fit that description of this move. This trade is going to make someone mad.
That is a really, really well thought out point there, and I totally dig it. And dividing the Judgment Day in that way would be so unique. My only critique would be that we have seen Dom appear on NXT. Why wouldn't he just show up on SmackDown anyway, too? It's like
he did the one time when they were like showcasing NXT talent.
It's interesting.
And they were like, oh, why? But
it is. It
is.
I'll Shad, though. Got to get your pick, Shad.
So before I start, the trade for a roster that appears on any show anyways is so silly to me. They obviously don't care about this brand split because I've seen wrestlers from different rosters pop in on each single show. Like, to your point, Dominic Mysterio has an NXT title, but he's a Raw superstar. Like, they don't care about the split up, but if we're talking about in theory and storyline, a lot of people are going to go with Cody Rhodes leading into this eventual match with Roman Reigns. And it very well might be that, but I'm going to pivot and pick a different person. I think the person that's going to trade is a person that is in storyline with Jey Uso at the moment that happened last Monday, and it deals with Sami Zayn. I think the superstar that is going to get traded is Sami Zayn's best friend, Kevin Owens. I think KO will go to SmackDown, and I think this creates friction and divide that just has an awkward tension between Jey and Sami all over again, and you can create a storyline whether it's Sami loses trust and he's upset with him due to this happening, or we eventually see these two guys get Usi and become a tag team. There's a lot of ways that you can go upon it, and then putting KO, after them losing the tag team titles onto SmackDown, being a babyface, having the possibility of feuds with guys over there like Grayson Waller or Austin Theory, or if you turn KO heel, put him in a program for babyface like LA Knight. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of refresh him back into a single superstar. And you, in a sense, what Adam Pearce said, you're going to make some people unhappy. You're going to make Sami Zayn unhappy. So I'm going to pick Kevin Owens as my selection for that reason.
Kevin Owens is not where I expected you to go, and I love the audible call, by the way, and I was hoping we'd see a few more good ones out of Mahomes last night, but we will pick that back up when Kelsey gets back shot. I hope you know that. And I'll still see you in February. I know my hat's green tonight, but don't get it twisted.
Kadarius Toney is dropping a football somewhere right now.
We got Rashee Rice out of SMU. That kid's going to put on a year. Wait till Kelsey gets back. And Big CJ, Chris Jones has got to come back too. Sorry for the football talk, guys, though. I'll give my pick next, which is Drew McIntyre. And here's the why. I just want the rematch at Survivor Series with Roman Reigns. And let's have him do something in the meantime before we get him to Cody on the back end of this year, during Mania season, essentially. But let's have him do something between now and then that maybe is less just fighting with my family. I think that was like, a Netflix movie about Saraya Page. But like, let's stop that, put that on the back burner for a second. Let's give him somebody that, took him to the brink multiple times. Clash at the Castle took him to the brink at Survivor Series a few years back. Let's give him McIntyre one more time. Call it a trilogy. I dig it. Send McIntyre over to SmackDown. There's just not much for him outside of like a Gunther match on Raw. And I don't necessarily believe that I love the idea of Rollins and McIntyre in a rivalry over the world title, or even McIntyre Priest. Doesn't really add up to me. I'd almost like to see him elevated once again by Reigns, because he seems to fire on all cylinders when he's in the ring with somebody of that caliber. You go back and look at all of the best things that McIntyre's done in WWE, and this isn't a knock on him, but he's had a worthy opponent on the other side, whether it be the Randy Orton rivalry, the Brock Lesnar rivalry, or even some stuff that he did with like Bobby Lashley at certain times. Drew's best work is against a formidable opponent, and we're running out of them on Raw outside of Gunther, and we've seen it a bunch. I feel like we've seen a lot from Drew, but we've seen it a bunch. I think it's Drew's going to SmackDown, and I think that's kind of our signal that he's actually re-signed with the WWE, and that's my broader point. You know what I'm saying? I think
I like that. I like that logic from both of you guys, and I like both of your picks. Both of them have a lot of sensible points onto it.
For sure. And it's one of those ones where, and we got a couple more comments here. We've got one more from Bobby Petito. I'm thinking it's Tegan Nox, since she hasn't had a match on Raw since July 3rd. Bobby, I love Tegan Nox, but if Adam Pearce said it's going to make us mad, Bobby, man, it's not going to be Tegan Nox. Unless it's like a package deal, because Tegan Nox going to SmackDown to get more wrestling is not going to make anybody mad.
She's not even getting wrestling on Raw.
Yeah, like, it's like, if anything, we would be happy if Tegan got traded to SmackDown in hopes that she would get more opportunity, But with that, let's move on to our next segment tonight, which is Jimmy Uso versus AJ Styles on SmackDown tonight, advertised. I'm a huge fan of AJ Styles. I'm going to toss this right to Coby, and then have you break down the match, and let's get into it.
I mean, obviously, this is built up from last week's SmackDown's events with the entire. It was Sikoa versus AJ Styles, and Jimmy Uso was the reason that Sikoa got the victory. And I think Jimmy Uso's sliding into that. Okay, I get Sikoa and Heyman are telling me I'm not out of the bloodline. I guess I have to be a part of the bloodline and look out for my family. Be one of those guys. Be a part of the bloodline without Roman Reigns being there. At the end of the day, this is an interesting match. I think this could be a really fun match because you have AJ Styles being the talent he is, and you have Jimmy Uso, who's on the rise as one of the, I guess, a top heel of the company, or at least a top heel on SmackDown. I think this could be really fun. Obviously, I do believe Styles is going to take another L in this scenario because he's not really in the situation where he needs a victory. Or is this where you start to build up something along the lines of AJ, or at least Gallows and Anderson versus Sikoa and Jimmy Uso? I said it before and I'll say it again. Until you're gonna go with it, or until you're gonna fully split them up, the bloodline needs to take some losses, whether that's Sikoa and Jimmy Uso, or Sikoa, Jimmy Uso, and Roman Reigns in a 6-man tag. I think you have a lot of merit of letting the what the bloodline has become put over some people like Lashley and like the OC like Lashley and the Profits. There's a lot of room you can do. So I do think this match is good, but I think this is almost like, oh, AJ Styles is just in this position because he's AJ Styles and he can work really well. So I hope there's more to it at the end of the day.
I love that. And by the way, before we move on, I did forget to ask you. You had one more potential idea, right, for one of those trades?
I mean, like that's the thing. I mean, when I was thinking about Cody Rhodes being the most telegraphed thing, I'd rather you burn that trade and give it to LA Knight. Give the Miz to SmackDown so he can feud with LA Knight. Like, I mean, that's the end of the thing. Obviously, that feud's been built on both rosters, but it was funny at the end of the day. I don't see that being the move, but I'd rather you see burn the trade than make it the most telegraphed WrestleMania main event in all time.
I hear you. I hear you. Absolutely. And by the way, I apologize. I'm giggling both at your joke, but also Shad just did Bruce Lee a fly off camera. It was one of the most athletic plays I've ever seen in my life. It was outstanding. But let's talk about Shotzi and Charlotte Flair versus Bayley and Io Sky. Damage mostly not being controlled still. I'm sorry, I have to sneak that line in, but Shot, I'm going to toss it straight to you. What do you think happens in this match? And are we finally done trying to control damage?
The damage has been uncontrolled for a while. Man, how do I say this? SmackDown on paper has some of the most talented women in the entire landscape of professional wrestling, but the booking of it has been so boring. Like, there's been nothing to get me drawn into anything that's going on. It's been stop and go, like you're on highway traffic. Like, it's been really, really, really boring and redundant, and it's not fair to the women who are on the roster. I mean, they're giving them time, which is great, but it's just been really pointless to me. We have this tag match, and it has a purpose because you're intertwining two feuds of two different members. Between, obviously, Shotzi and Bayley have been having this feud going on. But we kind of had a little bit of a match last week where Charlotte helped her out. But then you also have Charlotte tied to what I would assume is a feud with Io Sky being her first opponent. I wish there was just more decisive, clear-cut feuds within it. I don't like all the feuds being intertwined. That's one thing I don't like about AEW that they do as well, where there's just a bunch of women's feuds being thrown in one particular thing. Like, no, every feud, a feud is a feud. Give them the same time and opportunity as a feud as you would as a men's match. Charlotte Flair is one of the most renowned champions in WWE history. Io Sky is your women's champion. They deserve that bit of it. So obviously it's still kind of new to it, but it's been very boring and stop and go for it. The tag team match, you can flip a coin who's really going to win, I guess. I mean, I'm assuming Bayley's going to eat the L, maybe. It seems like she's been eating these L's a lot, and it's kind of not fair to her either because she's one of the best women's wrestlers in WWE history. But I would assume that maybe Bayley eats the L or Shotzi eats the L. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Flair and Shotzi. And, I mean, I want to see what's going to go on with the Flair and Io feud. I think it could be, and it will be an incredible match. I want to see some more progression going on with them. And, I mean, Shotzi and Bayley, we can kind of just end that feud at some point because it's not – from the initial interest of it with the hair cutting and all that to where we are now, it's just been of disinterest from there. So, yeah, damage uncontrolled.
Yeah.
We'll probably lose.
Yeah, it just feels stalled out, right? Which is sad because Bayley's, I think, just so good. We got a couple comments from Bobby Petito here. Bobby said, I could see Shotzi or Charlotte Flair pins Io Sky tonight in the women's tag team match.
Don't let the women's champion eat the L.
Yeah, I kind of actually disagree with that one as well, Bobby.
That's not the way to go, Bobby.
And then we got one more from there, Bobby. We got where's Isla Dawn and Alba Fire? That is a great question.
You tell me.
That is outstanding.
Where are they? Do we need to have an Amber Alert for these kids?
Hiatus. Yeah. Hopefully in like training camp or something. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
you took the titles off of them, and then you broke up that team, and now you have a one woman as the tag team champ. And shout outs to Chelsea Green, she's killing it. This is funny stuff, but you literally you're giving it the same comedic relief of a title at this point, like the 24/7 title.
Yeah,
it's a joke.
That's the worst part. I totally agree. It doesn't. It devalues the belt, and the belt's supposed to matter. You know, as much as the wrestler that's carrying it.
They're
right?
supposed to, and they really haven't.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
But let's talk about another match tonight that's actually not on SmackDown. This one's on Rampage. It's actually two of them. We got the semifinal. We got Jay Lethal and Pentagon versus the winner of Hardy and Samoa Joe. And that Hardy is, I believe, Jeff. Right? Yeah, it's Jeff.
Jeff Hardy, yeah.
I forgot for a second. I'm like, that's not Matt, right? That's Jeff. Yes. Let me get your predictions shot really quick on this one. What do you think between the two? What's the finals of the tournament?
So the semifinals. So I'll get the easy one out the way. Jeff Hardy, I love you, man. You made me as a child want to flip off of every sofa on the, to the mattress or whatever it may be. Samoa Joe is going to probably win that match. It's pretty crazy to think about. These guys are wrestling again in 2023 as all the times they've wrestled in previous companies. But I got Joe winning that. And Jay Lethal and Pentagon Jr. I'm going to go with Penta. That one's a little bit more difficult just because I think they do value Jay Lethal. And I think Jay Lethal is a pretty solid enough heel to put in position. But I think Penta's the bigger superstar, and I think he'll advance into it as well. So these two are going to wrestle each other. If the winner of each match would wrestle each other in the tournament, I haven't seen the
in the finals.
So tonight is Jay Lethal versus Pentagon Jr. and Samoa Joe versus Jeff Hardy on Rampage. The winners face off at Collision tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, then it'll be
semis, and then the winner of Darby and Roddy, which we'll get to.
Yeah, it's gonna be Pentagon versus Samoa Joe, which will be a great match.
I love that. Those are two great picks. Bobby Petito has his two picks in Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal.
You know what though? I don't think Jay Lethal is gonna win, but I wouldn't be mad if he did win because I would love to see.
I wouldn't mind it because of the history.
History on ROH, yeah.
The history is where that one gets really interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now, so Coby, what are your picks? Who do you have?
I mean, that's the thing. I do think we're in the scenario where we know who's. I don't want to say more valued. We know Jeff Hardy's not going to be put in it. Go over Samoa Joe because Samoa Joe's already in a program with MJF to a degree. So Samoa Joe not taking a loss is unfathomable.
Right.
The other one is, yes, Jay Lethal and Pentagon is more unpredictable. But I do believe because you're putting Samoa Joe in this heel role in an MJF feud, you need a face, and that ain't Jay Lethal. That is Pentagon Jr. Yes, it's odd he's in a tournament for a world title shot when he just lost a title shot against Orange Cassidy last week, which that doesn't add up either. But at the end of the day, that is the scenario they are presenting us.
For sure. And we got another funny comment here because you brought up Jeff Hardy from Matt Williams. I'm Matt. That's hilarious. Me fumbling over whether it was Matt or Jeff Hardy for a second. That's funny, Matt Williams. Shout out. Thanks for tuning in once again, as always. But let's talk about the other semifinal match. Right, Cobe? Roddy Strong and Darby Allin. What do you got in this one?
So this is where things get interesting because we're in a scenario where Roddy's in a feud with Adam Cole, in a feud with MJF, and he's basically saying, oh, I'm in this position to where I want to win this tournament because I want to face MJF and get my friend back or prove to my friend that MJF is still a scumbag and not your scumbag type of thing. And then there's the other dynamic of Darby Allin, but both of these guys are coming into this with injuries. Darby Allin's been banged up. He got banged up in the coffin match at All In, and Obviously, that was very well done and sold in the Luchasaurus match at All In or at All Out. At the end of the day, Roderick Strong selling a neck as well. So what I'm expecting is a great deal of just, I mean, especially for Darby, he's going to take a lot of backbreakers. Roderick's going to give him every type of backbreaker because he is the messiah of the backbreaker. And then Roderick has his neck as well. We know Darby has that stunner that can work the neck. I, if we're talking about a master of psychology, these two are going to sell their ass off in this match. That's what I'm excited for. If you wanted me to say about it, I do believe Roderick Strong gets the win because they're gonna take both feuds and go, okay, Roderick and probably Samoa Joe in a scenario where it's like, okay, well, which feud are we gonna prioritize for Dynamite Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe?
What exactly? So it's a triple threat in the final, right? Is the deal?
No. So the winner of Darby and Roddy faces the winner of whoever wins between the Samoa Joe
Yes.
and those matches are the semifinal. And then if it's Pentagon and Joe, the winner of that faces the winner of Darby and Roderick. Winner goes to MJF.
So those are actually the quarterfinal matches. That's where we messed up. The quarterfinals are Lethal and Pentagon and Hardy and Joe.
Those are quarterfinals.
I misspoke earlier. I just want to correct myself on that. Those are quarterfinal matches. Yeah. The semifinal match will be the winner of those two against. Got it. I completely understand. Now, I'm going to go with my picks really quick. I like the idea of both Joe and Penta winning. Obviously, I'm with that one. As far as Strong and Darby, I agree that Roddy wins. I don't think this is quite the time for shenanigans just yet. But what I do think we will see is shenanigans in the final. What my fear is, and this is no knock on David Sheldon, he presented a great argument when we were discussing what they can do with this tournament earlier. And this is going to lead us perfectly into our final topic here. And he suggested that Roderick Strong win the tournament by Adam Cole screwing Samoa Joe. And my only issue with that is Grand Slam is such a marker. They are in the New York market at an iconic Arthur Ashe Arena where they're holding the US Open on ESPN as we speak. They need to fill it. And it's not full yet. The LA show Full Gear sold out in a snap of a finger. You look up at the show in Seattle, tickets are flying. You can't fill New York? 81,000 in Wembley. In New York is a market you have to capture, right? I get that's enemy territory, but it's not the Garden. This is Arthur Ashe Stadium, and you have to fill this. And Joe MJF is the poster match. That is how you fill the rest of the seats. As far as what we have on tap, I think Roderick Strong is as good as the next guy. He's awesome. I love the backbreakers. I love the character work. I love everything about him. I think he's awesome. Do I think he fills Arthur Ashe Stadium opposite MJF? Not the way Samoa Joe does. Not the way Samoa Joe does. And that's my issue here. I think we talked about telegraphed earlier when talking about SmackDown and Raw and the trade, right? Telegraphing storylines. This is one I wish was more telegraphed. I, at the same time, though, am torn because I think part of the brilliance is that I'm not sure I'm getting the match I want. My only concern is, does that affect whether you buy a ticket in New York City?
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't mind being put on edge as a fan for the week. Dang, Roddy Strong MJF will be great, but boy, do I want to see Joe Max, right? Like that's the fight I want. You know, that's the money fight.
That's the thing, and my only question is just briefly, where do we see MJF's involvement at Wrestle Dream? because we know it's in honor of Inoki, and we know there's going to be New Japan involvement. Is this something we're going to say, okay, is MJF in a top match, or is MJF and Adam Cole going to defend against some New Japan guys? That's where I want to know, because I
At
don't think
Wrestle
we
Dream?
can at Wrestle Dream. I don't think we can extend Samoa Joe till Full Gear. I think we can extend the Adam Cole, Roderick, all that stuff until later on this year.
Yeah.
So I do agree with the merit that I do believe Samoa Joe MJF as a marquee match is way more effective than MJF.
And you also have the old school East Coast versus West Coast, and MJF's a true babyface right now. So you got to strike while that iron's hot, right? You have MJF, the native New Yorker, against the West Coast Huntington Beach guy in Samoa Joe. I mean, that ought to be able to fill a building. I'm almost wondering myself if it's too big a risk to do the tournament. And then that's turned people off to buying tickets.
I feel to both of your points with them kind of telegraphing two different feuds within the tournament. I think it does give you the idea of uncertainty, which way it can go. And I think that's the cool part about it. But I think Roddy's feud can be extended more just because you have the variable with Adam Cole onto it, where you can drive the story to be a lot longer. I agree to your point. You got to go Joe and MJF at the New York show at Arthur Ashe. Like that's a New York crowd type of match. You know, that's something that has that feel to it. And
you got their hometown guy against the West Coast super heel.
Yeah, and it'll be the one to put butts in seats for sure. So Roddy and MJF can still happen at a later time. You know, you still got to build heat to it as well.
Yeah.
You know, Roddy's still kind of getting more of a receptive reaction from the crowd and whatnot. So you know, even if it's on like a ROH show too, you never know. Like you can cut it in different directions, but I don't think he holds as much value to a big stage show like a Samoa Joe does.
Yeah, that's the thing for me too. Is like the history, the idea that MJF worked security for his entrance at NXT. He also, not only that, he gets shoved early. Remember, Joe shoved him and called him kid, like on AEW, and then now the way it's been built, did it again at All Out. It's strike while the iron's hot in my eyes. It's almost like the opposite of Biggie Tupac, right? You got Joe West Coast, MJF East Coast. It makes it's so easy to build. I want them to get the tournament done so that we have time to truly have like one more encounter, right? One more real big promotional push for Joe versus Max.
That'd be on next week's Collision.
Exactly.
Because the finals is next Dynamite, and we're two Dynamite, like not Arthur Ashe isn't next week, it's the following week.
And exactly. And to your point,
we're pressed for time.
That's on our next topic, is involved in the same thing. That's why I kind of stayed on this one. We're talking about what does AEW Collision do without Mr. Phil Brooks, without Mr. CM Punk? What do they do to sell tickets and drive ratings? I'm going to toss it to Coby first. How do you think they get this done?
I think the biggest thing is look at what Collision's done since June. Collision's been that show where they're putting, I don't want to say different talent, but they're putting more other talent that aren't always featured on a Dynamite. And they were giving them opportunities. House of Black were a main act. Andrade was getting a main act push. We're getting the Acclaimed on there. We're getting Samoa Joe was in a main feud with CM Punk. Collision, although might turn people away, Collision still needs to stay Collision and not become just another Dynamite-esque show. Collision needs to keep that different feel. yes, you still need to be able to sell tickets. Yes, you need to still use different talent and use different things. I do believe they're going to almost build that show around Bryan Danielson and possibly the Blackpool Combat Club. And I do believe that's the move because you have a feud, especially with the Bullet Club Gold, that is simmering and being there as a possible direction you can take. At the end of the day, Collision needs to stay different. I do believe that this is the where you can. I want to say people are going to tune in to see Samoa Joe and MJF another promo battle for them to build the match, but I do believe it's going to be of interest. You're going to have people who are checking out the video. If it's posted in full on YouTube, people are going to look at that. They posted the one from Dynamite in full. They've done it before with a Punk and MJF segments as well. If you post that in full and you garner interest, Collision still needs to have more segments and not become, oh, we're just going to put some random matches together most of the time, like they are on Rampage. They need to keep it separate and keep it interesting and keep it a different product or a different style of presentation of AEW. I do believe that's what it made Collision so special in the early months because okay, this is a different show. Things have time to breathe. We are able to watch everything and not think we're being overwhelmed like some people are a lot of the times with what happens on Dynamite.
Absolutely. I think you made amazing points there. Like I'm 100% with you. The Collision aesthetic needs to stay. The heart and soul of the show needs to stay. And one thing I'm going to personally add to this before I toss it over to you, Shad, is I believe that they need to build a lot of this show around the TNT title. It is literally on TNT, defended every week. Figure out how to book the TNT belt so that it's defended. We know we see that match. We'll see high quality wrestling and a title match every week, and anything can happen. And that's one little start. But I think there's multiple pieces you need to add. We've got 2 sets of tag team belts between the ROH titles and the AEW tag titles that are defended on live TV every single week, right? Almost. At least they're shown. We also have the trios titles. A little bit of separation on that might be the smartest thing AEW can do, where we figure out, okay, the trios titles are on Collision. The tag titles are going to be on Dynamite. It's not so rigid that you don't book any matches, but it just logically speaking, you know which storylines are going to be on which show. Don't organize it with a rigid roster, but just not fully predictable, but you understand who you're going to see. And that is key to me, I think. Right? Like advertising before shows matters. Having a good match booked that's a part of a storyline matters. A segment booked. Things like that. Surprises matter too. There's time and place. Dynamite, I feel like we get a weird mix of the two. We either get way too big of a surprise or way too telegraphed of a booked show. Collision needs to separate themselves and be a little bit more of the structured one, in my eyes at least. Shad, do you agree with that? Do you disagree? How do you feel about this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, the main point is just maintaining its own separate identity. The reason we like Collision a lot is because it feels like a completely different produced show than what we see on Dynamite and what we see on Rampage. And I don't, just because you lose one particular person in CM Punk doesn't mean you have to alter the vision of what the show is. One great thing that I think WWE does is they lean heavy on hot factions, and you're seeing it with what they do in the Judgment Day. I think AEW should do that same type of situation, but lean towards the BCC. You know, you're lucky enough to have as many members as you have on the BCC, but making it maybe a show that's geared to what Danielson does and let him kind of control, him be the one big time player on the roster that's going to be there every Saturday that makes people want to tune on to the television. To your point, there's just so many other people that are labeled when we initially started this more so unbooked or misfits that you got to continue booking. You put a mirror on there. You put a Christian Cage and Luchasaurus, like you, to your point with the TNT title. But there's one person that I think can change this up and make it work. And it's a person who's going to come back soon, from what I heard, Thunder Rosa.
Yes.
I think you bring back Thunder Rosa, because I've heard that, I don't know if it's true or not, obviously, I'm not a doctor. If Thunder Rosa is medically cleared, you bring her back, you put her on Saturdays, and you let her take the title off of, let's say, Statlander initially. You get that off of her, and it becomes her show. You got her, Thunder Rosa is going to give you great matches. You let her become that dominant champ again. It just becomes different, and it becomes a different book show, and it visually looks different than what it is on Dynamite. So, just stay with your identity. It's going to be a little bit of a tough initial process because CM Punk is a major draw. He was a key reason why this show was created, but you can still keep that same frame of what it was and keep building on it from the long run. It ain't going to happen in the snap of a finger, trust. But with people like Danielson, Miro, Thunder Rosa, Christian Cage, you can make stuff work out. So I got hopes for it.
Oh, I'm so with you, Thunder. Nah. I mean, we got to get Rosa back so badly. Dearly missed. Honestly, I listened to her a little bit on Busted Open this morning, and she's great there too. Thunder Rosa is awesome. I'm a huge Rosa fan myself, so I'm totally with you on making her kind of the face of that Saturday night show. Another one that I would add, though, on the other side, FTR fits the current Collision aesthetic so well.
That's true.
Kind of make it the FTR show.
And Bullet Club Gold too,
Gold
man.
Fits it great.
Those guys, I feel like with Collision, you got to keep it like a gritty aesthetic.
I agree.
Lean towards your major heels, like the BCC, Bullet Club Gold. Like guys like that are gonna make me want to watch it on Saturday.
It feels
personally.
like the perfect blend of like mid to late 90s toe the line edginess at times. Not to that extent, not late. I'm talking mid, right when it started to rise, like NWO, WCW.
Yeah, it got the Turner television.
Yeah, it's got the Turner thing, but then it's like almost 80s-esque in the way they do those opening. I love it's very cool. It's like a combination of eras in a really, really smart way. That's my favorite part personally, at least about Collision. But I know, Coby, you wanted to add something about what I said earlier.
The only thing that came to mind was when you were bringing up the TNT title, and I was like, wow, that kind of just avoids the whole entire storyline you've built, because Christian was entirely like, oh, we're going to defend this when we deem someone's ready, and we're not going to do open challenges like that. I think that very much just takes a step backwards from what you have just been building with Christian and Luchasaurus.
So I completely agree. And I think that's the brilliance, though, is of naming those two titles, both the TBS and the TNT, right, after networks, is you're not calling it a television title like you did on many shows, where a TV title is one you see defended basically every week, right? But it is named after the network, so it's like loosely linked to that idea. And it's so heelish of Christian and Luchasaurus to go, we're not going to defend it, of course, right? But I do think when the run runs its course, no pun intended, maybe, whatever. I'm not even sure if I intended to do that, but when the run runs its course, you put it on somebody that's going to workhorse that title every night in and night out on the show, and defend it against legit competition. Because I will say, maybe the most fondly remembered era of the TNT title was Cody's random defenses. You know what I mean? We got Eddie Kingston out of that. The Warhorse thing was hysterical. Ricky Starks. I'm so sorry. No, I apologize. But yeah, it's one of those things where that title is pretty fascinating. The ebbs and flows it's had. We got a few more comments here before we go home. We've got from my mom 100, love you, mom. We've got from Bobby Petito, I'd like to see Chris Statlander versus Thunder Rosa for the TBS Championship. Me,
you see it happen.
too.
It was my idea.
Me too, Bobby. And then one more from Bobby. Mercedes Martinez and Diamante are great on AEW Collision. I could not agree more.
Another good show
with
right
that
there.
insight. But with that, that brings us to the end of today's daily broadcast. We appreciate everyone who listened today. If you haven't liked and subscribed over on YouTube, please do. All the comments, they help us out so much. If you're on Spotify, 5 stars would be nothing short of delightful. With that, we will see you guys tomorrow at noon Pacific. That's my time. That's 2 Central, 3 Eastern, 8 p.m. over in the UK, and of course, 9 a.m. Hawaiian time. Have a good one, my friends, and we will talk to you soon.